I've just got back from Hog Easter in Somaliland and I'm a little bit tired. Although it's not too far. We went via Dubai and it was like I don't know, maybe 14 hours in total, sort of door to door, maybe 15, I don't remember. But we've had a really constructive time. I was invited out by the chap who you're about to see me speak with, Gwyn, and he's involved in NGOs and charities and that sort of stuff. And the kind of reason I went out was they're moving from just a pure aid perspective to social enterprise, and I was really interested in that, so I kind of offered my services. We had a couple of hours free, so we had this conversation that I filmed. In some respects, maybe I should have done an intro out there, but I just find it a bit weird talking to camera in front of people. I haven't quite managed to pull my younger millennial self, or maybe yet, I don't know, whichever generation I am. But anyway, I'm doing that here, and I've looked at it now on my screen. We had this really interesting conversation, and it was kind of twofold. The first is, this is a really, I think, quite a productive conversation. A lot of my videos have been about critiquing kind of the authenticity of faith. What's the kind of root cause and reason for our faith and those things, and you can watch as many as you like, thank you. Your comments have kind of continued inspiring me to make further ones. But this one's a lot more productive. It's kind of saying two things. The first one is we're really privileged as Christians, and in society we use that, and that word's bandied around a heck of a lot. But I don't think it's used as in a Christian term. But we have massive privilege. The first privilege is safety. We're going into kind of knees up festival time where, you know, as a young person it was Soul Survivor, then it's New Wine, HTB are about to have one, I think, Vineyard, I'm sure they have one. All the different networks that all of us have been involved in. July and August are the kind of knees up time, and that's a massive privilege to be doing that. I met with someone in Somaliland who's involved in an underground church. He's a Christian. We were chatting in quite sort of subdued tones in a restaurant, and what a lovely guy. He's even been in prison for his faith, and you kind of think, gosh, that's serious privilege that I've got. The other privilege side that I have is I went out to Somaliland from my nice home to go out there, and that's one part of our conversation. And I think what led me into this I use as an introduction, and I'll keep that in. It's a bit long, but I've put some pretty bits of Somaliland and interesting bits in there, so you can kind of see a bit of what I saw. And I'm going to run that over while I'm talking because you couldn't see me. I've just got one camera and I'm in the reflection. But Gwyn's a really interesting chap. I think he represents where a lot of us could be, and he represents the thinking a lot of us might have. And the kind of question of calling, where typically and traditionally, calling would always be within the auspices of church, within the four walls. And my question with Gwyn is, what does faith look like outside of that? And within this perspective, perhaps within our privilege as well. What responsibility do we have? So I would love you to watch a lot of this. It's quite long, but I'll put in some chapters just in case you don't have time to watch it all. But I find him and what he's doing and the people that he's with really inspiring to challenge me. Okay, what does faith look like? And to be really perhaps honest, I feel kind of exhausted spiritually this morning, and I don't think it's energy fully. I mean, it was only 2 hours difference, and sat on a plane all day yesterday, or 2 planes. It wasn't that big a deal, but I'm feeling quite worn out. I was missing trees and green grass, and people that I really know. And sure, I mean, I do film sort of projects all over the place, but it's interesting to go into a situation like that, considering, is this ministry? Is this mission? And we weren't doing it overtly, obviously we couldn't, but what are you doing? Whether it's overt or kind of underground, is that something that still is in you? And this conversation hopefully might inspire that. Thanks again for watching. Please write your comments. Maybe you want to say, yeah, this is really inspiring, come and chat with me or chat with my friend. And please do subscribe, because that means these pop up in your feed and you can see my face. Thank you, thanks again, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. So Gwyn, we're in Hargeisa in Somaliland.
Yeah.
And I think if we start just by how I got to know you.
Okay.
And so I'll say it from my point of view, you say it from your point of view, then we'll explore other aspects. So when all of this sort of stuff came out in the news around theology, that's how I often started these things, because essentially my questioning around my church experience happened as a thing there.
Yeah, sure.
So my involvement in Soul Survivor when I was 18 kind of in some ways turned me into that almost professional Christian, you know?
Yeah.
The churches that were HDB related or evangelical charismatic, they hired me probably because I did a gap year there. You know, I went off to the US to be involved in planting a church, all probably because of my association of spending $2,500 on doing a gap year with Soul Survivor.
Okay.
So when the news came out about Pilavarchi, it kind of wrong-footed me.
Yeah.
30 years later, or 25 years later, it was really bizarre. And I thought, well, what was the truth of this entirely? And as I spoke with loads of people that were hurt and it woke up their negative experiences.
Yeah.
And I spoke with them. I started thinking, well, what good was this stuff? You know,
Yeah.
kids becoming Christians in tents. When I was there, it was fantastic and it was really exciting. I was part of something that was changing Britain. But then where are they now? You know, now they're 45 like I am or whatever. Where are they now? What are they doing?
Yeah, yeah.
And a heck of a lot of them seem to just have ignored that as being an experience in their teenage years or in their 20s that is no longer relevant to them. And sure, there's, when everyone talks about Christianity being a good moral framework or foundation, like if you reduce the life of Christ to that, I think it's pretty dull.
I know.
So I went the reverse, because if it's that, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
You know? I think you might as well like live like the world tells you if that's it.
Yeah.
So instead, I was drawn to you because I was thinking, well, who? And while I was doing work in Ukraine, I was thinking, well, who are the Christians doing stuff? I was seeing a bunch of wealthy people generally, and I was working with a charity that were often giving out of their wealth. But I was thinking, who are the Christians giving out of their faith? So I don't know how I found you on LinkedIn, but you were or are CEO of Feed the Hungry.
Yeah.
And as a charity, you were doing soup runs and giving aid and food to those that couldn't get out of Ukraine, those that didn't have the money, the network, or maybe the imagination that they could go, and you were supporting them. I thought, okay, I want to talk with you. What is it as a Christian that drives you to lead an organisation that does that? And then I was interested in you personally. How does your faith inspire you to live in the stuff that isn't good moral framework, instead trying to emulate the life of Christ? So that's my intro and how I got to know you. Tell me a little bit about what you do. So give me a bit of a background in terms of, did I get it right to have a chat with you? And in some respects, being here with you in Somaliland demonstrates that. But
I'm waiting for the drum roll now.
Yeah.
So that was a great build-up, thank you. So I came from a village in North Wales, which I was probably the only Christian child in the village.
Right.
So I went to a very strict Methodist, Presbyterian background, and evangelical Church of Wales. So, no television on a Sunday, going for walks instead, and Sunday school, morning service and afternoon. So it's quite intense, but that was life. That's all you knew.
Yeah. I had a similar, I suppose, going to a Baptist church.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very similar. Like church was all day Sunday.
That's right. Yeah. And then you start waking up to the fact that a lot of people weren't doing that. And why was that?
Yeah.
So you grow up in that sort of very strong faith, biblical background. But where was love in all of this? And that sort of question that is always in the back of your mind. And then, you know, as with a lot of youngsters at that age, you know, when you go into college, then you go off the rails and try and find yourself and who you are and what other sort of life is like out in the big wide world. But, you know, still having an interest in faith, going to church, but still finding that same sort of mechanism of church leaders and congregations and nothing in between. Even though we tried pushing the doors and even into mid-20s, 30s, you know, you still push, you still look at the hierarchical structure of doing things in Sunday school, youth, mission, but at the end there was no family, community atmosphere, it was structure. I felt that there was always something missing in doing that, in that sort of way. So I put all my efforts into my work. So, what
were you doing?
So I worked in design, project managing projects like shop fitting, restaurants, and grew very good at what I did. To the extent I was doing museums and large attractions around the world, and really enjoying that time, but really had this conflict of spending a lot of money doing advertising, basically, promoting, putting the glitz on things.
As I call it, and this is selling shit that people don't need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And coming from an advertising background as well, for a few years, I get it.
Yeah. So we were selling camel shit like nobody's business, you know. Coming in Somaliland with a lot of camels around, I think that's quite appropriate. But during that time, I was going to places around the world, whether it was in Beijing, Shanghai, Los Angeles, and seeing the actual difference in lifestyles of people who were on the edge of life and those who were enjoying extreme luxury. And so something in me sort of says, you know, where's God in all of this? You know.
How did that start? What was the? And it not necessarily even the trigger, but how did that begin emerging? Because, like when you go to London, say to go to the theatre, and you sort of have to half step over someone that's homeless.
Yeah.
You get used to it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
And so for a lot of us, you do that enough, and sure, there's that bit of you that thinks, you know, I'll be pleased to have a cereal bar on me when someone's begging on the train, so I give them a cereal bar.
Yeah.
But I don't always remember to pack one.
Yeah.
And that's the extent that I go. So what began changing where you saw the disparity in those different cities?
I think going down the wrong streets or being in a 5-star hotel, going round the corner and seeing a beggar being kicked by a policeman, and those moments start to build up because it's outside your thinking. You're not standing over the beggar who's there every day in your life. You know, there are instances where you're seeing people, you know, a child without legs, you know, begging in the streets of an African city. Starting to think, well, there's got to be something more to this than allowing all this to happen, you know. And when you start to think what you're doing is just creating more money for people in a very small area of the whole of the world.
Yeah, they stay in their 5-star hotels and don't go around the corner.
That's right, yeah. And I know people who just travel from London to Paris to Tokyo and don't see anything beyond those environments. So when you start talking to them, did you see that? Then they don't want to know.
No.
You know.
Yeah.
You know. That's,
So were you someone that would always leave the hotel and go around the corner, you know, symbolically or metaphorically, or did that begin happening?
That began to happen. Then I made it purposeful to find out what life was really like for people on the streets. In terms of a spiritual experience, you know, I was coming out of work and well, there's two experiences. One of them was coming out of work and I felt God say, well, I'm going in a different direction. Do you want to come with me? And it took me 2 years to get to that place where God wanted me to be. So I sold them a house, talked to the family, said, look, this isn't any good. You know, I want to make a difference in the world. And I believe that that's where my faith I can put it into action, however little and wherever that might be.
How old were your family when you were at that stage? Because selling the house is kind of it's a big deal and unsettling. So how old?
Yeah, I mean, we will spend probably take the glitz off it all.
Yeah.
Is we were in that stage or lifestyle that you were spending more money. You had more money on your credit cards than you had in the bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're actually saying we need to actually put some realism into life as well as, you know. So there's lots of factors that influence.
Right.
So that, you know, putting the truth as it is, as it was. But faith was the main driving force, and to sit down with Lorraine, who was a very strong in her faith, who was a Christian counsellor, and talked it through. For my son, it was a harder experience, but he was supposed just leaving for college. So he says, well, that's your life, you know. So
right.
So we downsized to put ourselves in a place where we could put ourselves in that position to do something. Which was hard, because the first job I got, it was like in a sweat factory. You know, going from being a director of a PLC company to working in a sweatshop was...
What do you mean a sweatshop? What were you doing?
Actually building signs and vinyl signs and whatever, and actually... and it was a real churning it out. You know, if you got something wrong, you got hauled out and made an example of. The whole structure was, I wouldn't say it was evil, but it was very close to it.
Using that guillotine.
Yeah, absolutely.
and that boss who just wants to put petrol in their Porsche.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and he was racing horses and everything. So
I know the feedback really well. That's fine. When I work with Canon, I know those guys.
So, and that's when you really get down on your knees to say, look, you know, I need to be where you want me to be.
How long were you doing that for?
It was 12 months.
Right.
So
pretty good innings.
I know.
And okay, so then you're getting to a stage where you were doubting your decision, or you knew you were on the right.
I knew I was on the right track, because I just needed to, you know, say, Lord, you know. And I suppose it's part of the experience of losing what you had, I suppose, mentally trained yourself to be. And that was a process of actually letting all those things go. And getting down to life, and really learning from those people in that sweatshop that if they didn't do that work that day the way it should, they'd be losing money. You know, they'd have time knocked off, they'd get money knocked off, whatever. You know, so you start to learn the hardship that people go through.
Which you just don't get in a marketing or advertising agency.
No, you don't do.
No, the free beers on a Friday and
that's right.
Cokes in the fridge and.
Oh yeah, no. I had an expense account which was bigger than many people's salaries, you know. And I got told off if I didn't spend it.
Right.
So.
So okay, so there's been 12 months using the guillotine, the knife, making sure the print is exactly right.
Yeah.
You're using all the materials correctly. Then what happened?
Yeah, I started looking at where God wanted me to be. So I started looking at advertising, whether it was a missionary on a canal boats or,
Yeah.
whether I should go into an internship, become a pastor, and none of those things seemed to really hit me in my heart. And then I saw this small little 4-line advert, which, being in the advertising industry, that people are trying to hide that job because they've already got somebody in mind for it.
Right.
So, but I said, okay, we'll apply. So it was for Feed the Hungry, and so did my research and found out that it was more than just a food bank around the corner.
Yeah.
But there was no money in the bank. Why was that? And so I put a document together to say I would take it from 0 to $1 million within 5 years.
Yeah.
Having that experience of being in marketing, presentation, and everything.
Yeah.
So I knew what I was doing and how to do it. So my first interview was in a pub, and I thought, these are Christian people and they're meeting me in a pub. Okay, that's different.
A bit different to the Methodist.
No.
Welsh kind of. Was it No,
Yeah, Presbyterian.
Yeah.
So not a cup of tea, but a glass of.
And old rich tea biscuit.
Yeah, and this was one of the.
What did you order to drink?
I think it was half a lager or something.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I thought I'd edge my bets. But the chauffeur with him, and then I learned that he was probably one of the best African ministers in London.
Right.
So big church background, and we had a great laugh. And I thought, okay, this is fun.
Yeah.
So we were all dressed in casual sort of. So 2 weeks later, they called me to go down to the church in London. So they said that the president would be coming over from America. So I said, okay, first interview was very relaxed. I go casual,
Yeah.
So, marched into a boardroom with silk ties, suited and booted.
American.
Yeah. And they wanted to know exactly that they were the bosses.
Right. Sure.
So I think because the person that they wanted wasn't the choice of the trustees in the UK, and
Right.
the trustees thought I'd be better suited to move it forward.
Yeah.
Very strong. I'd got no idea who this Peter Sumrall was. Sumrall was a massive evangelist going around the world.
Right.
His ministry set up this foundation coming out of the 1980s, same time as Live Aid and everything else down in Africa, and had started shipping out food by the boatload. And so this was a continuation of that program since the 80s. So I presented the plan to them, and I thought, nah, I've not got this.
Yeah.
So phoned the wife from a telephone kiosk. I don't know if you remember what those were. I said, I don't think so. Following day, got the job. Can you get a passport? You're out in Uganda in 2 weeks' time.
Right.
So there's no better way than learning what life is really like than being out feeding kids who are starving in a line.
How did you find that first?
It was an extraordinary visit out in both Uganda and Kenya. In Kenya, it was in Kibera, which is the largest slum in Africa, and seeing 500 kids in a line being fed is planted in the back of my mind, and I'll never forget it. seeing the hunger in their faces and the joy of receiving that food. But most of those kids only had a piece of paper to hold the rice in, to eat out of. The school couldn't even afford to buy bowls for the kids. So you know that you're on, on life's edge, that the people had heart to help those kids. And, that's where faith starts motoring, because you're seeing love in action in a way that you don't see it in a nice little Welsh village in Wales.
No.
So yeah. So very motivating.
Yeah.
And meeting some of the other team in the US afterwards who have the same heart. And same passions, and coming from a guy who was working in McDonald's in Australia, and a guy who was a cameraman out of Germany, just ordinary people turning their lives into helping people with big hearts, and
And so that first time in sort of East Africa was what you said imprinted in the back of your mind. But how long have you been there, and what sort of how was the kind of cadence or frequency of you visiting places, and how have you, in your faith or just your heart, responded to those experiences? I mean, is it now, are you at the stage that I am, which is hopefully I've got a cereal bar in my bag, you know what I mean? Like the kind of, because 500 children are representative of what, 50,000 or like that need the food?
I mean, at the time, as an organisation, we were feeding 35,000 kids.
Right.
So 15 years later, we're feeding 600,000 kids.
Wow.
Every day, every school day.
Right.
So to create that, be part of creating that momentum has been really special.
Yeah.
And other projects on the line, putting water programs in, starting farming programs alongside schools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's part of the journey. So I made sure that I went out 2 or 3 times a year you just can't think on paper what those things are. You want to know what the pain is, where they're hurting, because you can say, oh, we do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't fit with what you do, we'll go somewhere else and do it where people like it. You have to be on the ground, knowing where people's hearts are, where they're hurting, and then develop a program around what their needs are. So you have a basic format, then you use that to develop it.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind, I've got a few things that have sort of popped in my mind. The first one is, how, with this experience of growing that kind of charitable aid, how have you, and then connecting with people that are in real need, how have you reconciled that with your sort of Sunday church experience?
Yeah, I mean, the Sunday church experience out in Africa is very different.
Yeah.
But it's not even that. It's the heart of the person who's given their life to help those kids.
Yeah.
Now that's where I see God at work.
Right.
And faith, and their heart, and their pain, and their anguish, and their prayers. Where they are praying overnight because there's no food on the table the next day.
Yeah. But how are you on Sunday when you're back, sort of Hinckley or Coventry or where you're based? How does it fit? Like, I remember when I first went to Kenya.
Yeah.
In fact, it was with Soul Survivor, and I remember coming back to England. First thing, there's the culture shock, going into the supermarket, and I remember, I don't really remember it that well. My mum tells me I was just like looking at everything in shock, and she's never been to any of the places we've talked about, but she saw a real culture shock in me. The next stage of culture shock is almost like a faith shock.
Yeah.
And that's something that either you cover over with emotion in worship or prayer, just go, God, I need healing, or give me more of a heart for these people, and it becomes this sort of the practiced exercise, or there's a disconnect. Like a friend of mine I was talking with recently talks about, the prophets never wanted, the prophets never heard in a church.
Yeah.
So you either kind of go into this emotional thing, or you're kind of rejected. How have you brought the two together in terms of that?
It's only been very recently that it started to come together, because you take on board what you're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, you do.
And you're saying, how can I apply this back home in a way that is appropriate back home? So I was starting to write to ministers to say, look, we need to develop transformational programs here to actually connect with people in community, because people aren't going to come to church. You've got to connect with people where they're at.
Yeah.
And that's not just by evangelism, that's actually being friends, family to them in their circumstances.
Yeah.
But it's been a hard journey. In some ways you can't blame the people, you have to blame the system that they're ingrained in over 2 or 3 generations, and it's very hard to actually develop out of that system. But I believe that change is coming, has started to appear in different churches.
When you say about it was a difficult process and it's only just started happening now, talk to me about some of the detail, because I think a lot of people that watch these videos, there's not, it's not like it's a massive audience. It's people, the people that watch these videos and then comment have a deeply shared experience between the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to connect with.
Yeah.
So talk about the kind of detail of like why is it only just happened recently, and what were some of those details?
COVID helped.
Right.
Because it isolated the church from people, and the people started to look at other means of actually either expressing their faith, or and the actual, we had started receiving 5,000 sandwiches a day from DHL and other organisations, and we started distributing sandwiches to homeless on the streets and in...
The charity or the church you're involved with?
The charity.
Yeah, right.
So my thinking was, can I apply what I'm doing out in Africa back home?
Great, yeah, cool.
So then that becomes an example that I could actually talk to people about, is that I'm doing it here in the UK.
Yeah.
Are you going to join me to help to develop this?
Yeah.
So then COVID came along, and which had a massive effect on church attendances afterwards.
Yeah.
People started questioning why they were going to church.
Yeah.
During that time, I didn't have a day off during COVID, because we were delivering food packs in the local area around Leicestershire, and meeting people on the street that I would never have met before. Whether it's people in oxygen masks that weren't coming out of their homes because they couldn't.
No. Yeah.
People who were in plaster, people who had illnesses, who were just lonely people, and because of that loneliness become isolated.
Yeah.
So it started meeting people where they were at. So from that we started to develop food vans that delivered food to people.
Yeah.
So started community pantries, connecting with churches that could actually then connect with people, and using those pantries, mobile pantries, for them to actually meet people in the community where the need was. Which has worked really well in some areas, but a lot of churches are so entrenched in what they're doing, they just can't see beyond the doors of the church.
And And so and it's still going, that challenge, right?
Yeah, but we are seeing change. We are seeing a lot of independent churches who are developing food banks and coffee community, coffee church or cafe church, whatever.
Yeah.
But they're still trying to do it in the same environment rather than taking it into where the people are
Absolutely.
at.
Yeah.
But it's a transition,
Yeah.
and people are learning from that. I mean, we're looking at taking over a pub in Bedford,
Yeah.
right in the centre of town,
Yeah.
and converting it into a cafe church, community facilities where people are going to, near the bus station, people who can't afford cars, people who are coming in to talk to the council, whatever.
Yeah.
It's being at a point of interaction
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah.
In Bedford, you have a huge amount of nurses who come over from Zimbabwe thinking they're going to earn a lot of money, which when they see what they're earning in Africa, and they think, oh wow, this is great, but they can't live on what
Cost of living in
Cost
Britain.
of-
Yeah.
so that people are hurting all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's developing those programs of love in action.
Yeah.
That made me look at the word church and look at, I'm not convinced that the Greek Latin really tells the real story about what church should be.
Yeah.
And until you look at the Aramaic, at the spoken word, and actually it talks about a community of people who meet to pray and to read the Bible,
Yeah.
but who build community and look after the poor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole, but we're not doing that. And we're not taking up the whole value of what Christ meant by building church.
So one of the things that I have I used to work in television a lot.
Uh-huh.
I still get close to it, but to be honest, I'm not the right demographic anymore for television. Look, this is the reality in Britain. But one of the things that certainly came out of that kind of liberal industry was white saviour. So, and one of the things I've had most fulfilment as a Christian has been travelling to environments that I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Here being another one. And saying, and having the opportunity, it's such a luxury to do this.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, getting on a plane, staying in a nice hotel, and trying to ask God, okay, how can you use me, is a real luxury. Because it's an adventure. But that thing of, well, actually, who are you to do what you're doing is a white saviour thing. And actually, arguably, the charity, and I know I'm saying something rhetorically in some ways, a charity that comes out of a sort of TV evangelist culture could support that kind of argument. But how do you kind of reconcile the coming from just as I did, like a middle class home, and then helping, those in need, and this is very much a political question. We'll come back to the stuff where we agree on. How does it work? Because I just feel like there's a lot of negative attitude at home about this kind of, which to me I still don't get, and I don't appreciate, and I don't actually respect. But how would you challenge that argument?
No. Yeah. There's a number of arguments. I mean, I've had periods of time where people have delivered boxes of food at doorsteps in between work.
Yeah.
So I know what it is to be poor.
Yeah.
And in debt and in trouble, and God has blessed us enormously during those times.
Yeah.
The history of our family is my father came, was an orphan.
Try not to just come on the microphone. Do you have a
Yeah. So he was an orphan. His mother died at birth. He was separated from his brother. His brother went to a rich family. He was with his poor grandmother. So he was basically an orphan child, you know. So that, we are only a step away from being on the poverty line. In whatever life, we see it in Africa, where life can change very quickly. The politics can change. We've seen it in Burkina Faso. We've seen, and I've been with the Tuareg up in the north, and I've been down south with the Christians who have been pushed and lost everything from there. And it does affect you, having seen those experiences come. But being the white privileged person, is how you use that privilege to bless others. Is that, and having the opportunities is how we use those opportunities to bring about change. And at the moment, I've come out of Feed the Hungry because it is limited by its constitution in what it can and can't do.
Yeah, sure. So say why we're here then. Why are we here now? Because essentially that segues really nicely into it. So,
So over the
because I just think it's important to kind of talk about some of the things which, like, I don't like skirting around issues, and I don't want to be naive about things either. Anyway, so I always think it's like if there's an issue on something, I want to ask about it. Whether we resolve it or not doesn't matter, but it's worth talking about. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So why are we in Huggies today?
So a couple of years ago, I started developing started writing down what does transformation look like. So taking a child and actually giving them an education when they're 15. We've fed them, we've helped them through their education. What next? And it's that what next, which is the difficult bit, because there isn't a what next in many of their circumstances. And I was saying, well, it's not good enough. We can shout about how many children we're feeding, but all we're doing is delaying the inevitable, is that they're going to be pain and anguish, and only a small percentage of those might go on to college or on to further education because they haven't got the means to do so. So you have to change the culture, and by developing a more holistic program which takes into account where the jobs are, where the hospitals are, where the schools are, becomes more of a long-term plan. But it's like going to church where you say, this is what I believe is right and what we should do. But because people are so ingrained in what they have been doing for years before, it's very hard to get it across the line. So, but the people of Somaliland said, this might work here. Because they've been isolated from the rest of the world. The World Bank gives them a small amount, but they haven't got any debt. So they're a poor country, but they have their own independence, not only from other countries, but from the world banking system, which drives people into poverty. So there is an opportunity here to actually change the norm. So what we're looking at is developing business programs in the two main areas which they have, in mining and agriculture, and then seeing how that can translate from commodities into products. So then you are building jobs, you're building infrastructure, you're building a long-term plan for a nation, which can be replicated in areas smaller than a nation, so they've embraced that, which is you know, you saw me and what I was like when we were signing the document to say something like, because it's been over 2 years in the making. And politically they've gone through changes, elections, etc. And the mining minister has been handed a document and said, oh, these guys wrote this, what do you think? And invited us back and said, do you know what, this could work.
And for you, was it, I don't know if it was you or Andy saying, it was kind of more Andy, but it was saying, like, you, and talk about you, but you've been involved in increasing the efficiency, effectiveness, and encouraging more giving.
Yeah.
To increase aid where it's needed most. Now you're sort of thinking about how do you bring together your expertise, other people's expertise, working collaboratively to think, well, business is the opportunity here for people to be part of growth.
Yeah.
So how does that fit? Because you and I have spoken about, like, understanding, rather than talking about church, we talk about kingdom, and I think this is probably the last bit we can end on.
Yep.
So where I connect with you is to say that the way that we interact with each other,
yep.
or the way we interact with strangers, the way we use our time and how we constantly think about things, the way we worship even, and the way our outward faith seems to be connected more about, I don't know, how did Jesus live?
Yeah.
What was written in the Bible, and how was life lived there?
Absolutely.
Rather than, I want to be a worship leader on a stage in a church, or I want to write a book eventually around something and hopefully I sell it. So and you talk about it being kingdom-like faith. So how this kind of, there's a chicken and egg to this in terms of your lived out experience.
Yeah.
And then applying theology to it. But also your theology is kind of impacting the way you're approaching this thing as well. So I guess it would be good to talk about it, and for people who like, actually I want to serve God in a way that has way more life and capacity to it than the life that I was suggested to live by the church is that you and I have had similar experiences in.
Yeah.
So the question's really garbled, but you see where I'm trying to come from.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I started exploring the Lord's Prayer and saying, "Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." I think it suddenly dawned on me that Jesus talked more about kingdom than he did about church, and talking about how heavenly hosts interacted with each other in the doing and in the sending and in the saving, and there's so much about how kingdom operates. I think we need to operate like that on earth. We need to bring those principles of saving nations, stopping evil, bringing a message of goodwill to those in need, wherever that might be, in their circumstances.
Literally feeding the hungry, clothing the poor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, that's where the heart of God is. There's more verses about feeding the poor than anything else in the Bible.
Yeah.
But you can't do that from your bucket seat in church. You have to be out there.
So how is this? And I want to sort of start finishing up. But how? So again, my church experience would almost be the evangelist would be doing what you're doing, and they're out there doing that. God's called them to that. But for the rest of us, we're almost like the 5,000 that were fed with the 2 loaves and 2 fishes.
Yeah.
We kind of just crack on. We're sitting in, I think John uses a language of sitting in flower beds, shapes. And you've got this kind of image of my seat is to be fed through a miracle, it's amazing, in these pretty flower beds, and that's my life, beginning, middle and end. While someone else does something else. So how...
Yeah.
But God has a plan for each of us, right?
Absolutely.
And yet so many of us are reduced to be sitting in those flower bed, the pretty organised flower beds. How do we get from a place where, you know, God's got a plan for your life, He's called you to do this, all those various things, promises and ideas that we were given. How do we get from a stage where that means working hard, showing up to church, paying your tithe, being loyal, all the other things that there's expected of you, and then you get to an age and you think, or maybe you retrain and become a pastor or a vicar or whatever. How do people have the imagination? How would you encourage people to have the imagination that would lead them to Somaliland, a country that's not even known as a country?
Yeah. Through my experiences, you know, I thought that being in these places, I had to preach the gospel.
Right.
Because that's taking on board the culture, is that as an evangelist, as a church member, I have the opportunity of going here to feed the poor in order for me to preach the gospel.
Sure.
But I'm saying, no, it's not that. I'm taking the presence of God and His love into a situation, and I'm allowing God's love to work out in those circumstances. I don't have to preach the word, but I'm allowing love to work. I've seen villages, whole villages, come to know Jesus without me speaking one word. Because I've given them a piece of land that says, how can we deny God if you're giving us the milk and honey that we've never had?
But the argument would be, from the Conservative, well, how would they come to know Christ unless you told them what the Word of God was?
Only recently, we were putting a water tower in Uganda to one of the most ancient tribes in the whole of Africa.
Wow.
So it was a water tower that would be big enough to feed a whole community.
Sure.
So it had irrigation systems and everything. And we only asked them one thing. We didn't say, now we've done this, come to know Jesus, come on. And we didn't. We said, well, what would you like us to do next? And they said, we want a church because we want to worship the God who's built that tower for us. You know? So you're taking the presence of God. It's up to God to meet them with our hearts. And the hearts of people, when they see love, genuine love, that's what changes them. I mean, down in South Africa, we went to one of the hardest, meanest areas where no white man goes. So the big news in that area, this white man's come and walked among us. Who's this white man? So the church was full. They wanted to know why this white man was coming to the most dangerous place in Johannesburg. And we gave them bread. We put a stall outside, just on a patch outside. And 600 people came up. 450 gave their lives to Jesus without saying one word. And that people were being healed on the route of coming to get their bread, because the presence of God in that act was actually so intense that people say, how can we deny God? You know, and it's just so when God takes me to Somaliland, I'm not asking where can I preach the gospel, is where can I show love? Because I know I'm taking the presence of God in there, and therefore I'm allowing God to work. I mean, He's probably working here already, preparing the ground, and gives us the opportunity for love to reach people's lives.
Great. Thanks. Stop there. I feel like we need to do part 2 at some point. Thank you for watching this video. Please do subscribe and comment and stuff. Be part of what's going on. I'm going to continue making videos like this. And again, thank you. Without this, I wouldn't be inspired to make these. I guess if it would just be a couple of people, my mum saying, "Oh, well done, Sam," I'd just prefer to have a conversation with her. But these, as you interact with me, it kind of really encourages me. So thank you. Thanks for being part of it.